It's a strange thing about people. We keep trying to explain ourselves to those who don't plan to understand. Not because they don't want to hear us, but because they can't. They're watching a different movie completely. And here you are standing outside the theater trying to explain the story of your movie to someone who's still sure they're watching theirs. It's tiring, isn't it? This constant need to explain, to make clear, to make people understand. But what if I told you that the very act of explaining yourself to certain people is like trying to describe color to someone who's determined to see only in black and white? We've been taught that talking is the answer to everything, that if we could just find the right words, the perfect explanation, then surely people would understand. But the truth is far more interesting than that. Some people are so caught up in their own made-up ideas, so stuck in their own views of reality that your words become nothing more than noise. And the harder you try to break through, the more energy you lose. It's like shouting into a wind tunnel. The sound goes out, but it never reaches its destination. So let me ask you something. How much of your life have you wasted trying to convince people how are never going to be convinced? How many times have you repeated yourself, said it differently, tired yourself? All in the hope that this time they'll finally get it. And what happened? They twisted your words. They heard what they wanted to hear. They made you the bad guy in their story, no matter how carefully you explained yourself. This is not an accident. This is not a failure of talking. This is a crash between two completely different ways of thinking. Now, before we go any further, let me be clear about something. I'm not talking about healthy disagreement. I'm not talking about people who really want to understand you but see things differently. I'm talking about something else completely. I'm talking about people who are living in a kind of dream, a self-made prison of beliefs and false ideas so solid that nothing you say can get through it. And the reason nothing gets through is because they're not interested in truth. They're interested in being right. They're interested in protecting their version of reality, even if that version looks nothing like what's actually happening. The moment you realize this, everything changes because you stop taking it personally. You stop thinking there's something wrong with your words. You realize that the problem was never your explanation. The problem is that you're speaking to someone who has already decided what you mean, what you are, and what you stand for. And no amount of explaining will change that. It's like trying to reason with a dream. The dream doesn't care about your logic. It follows its own rules. Let me tell you what happens when you try to explain yourself to someone trapped in false ideas. First, you waste your energy. And I don't mean just a little bit of energy. I mean the kind of deep soul-level tiredness that comes from fighting a battle that was unfair from the start. You pour yourself out trying to be understood, and what do you get back? Confusion, blame, more questions. It's a loop that never ends because the other person is not interested in understanding. They're interested in their own story. And you, my friend, are just a character in their story. A character they've already written. The old wisdom teachings understood this. They knew that not everyone is ready to hear the truth. Not everyone can handle it. Some people need their false ideas. They need them to survive. Take away their false ideas and they fall apart. So they defend those false ideas with everything they have. They'll twist your words, attack your character, and if you're still trying to explain yourself to them, you're actually helping them keep the false ideas. Because every time you engage, you give them something to fight. You give them a reason to dig in deeper. There's a story I once heard about a man who spent his whole life trying to convince his neighbor that the sky was blue. The neighbor kept saying it was green. So the man brought pictures, photos, science explanations. He even brought other people to confirm that yes, the sky is blue. But then Aber wouldn't change his mind. Green, he said. It's green. And one day, tired and beaten, Thaman gave up. He stopped trying to convince his neighbor. He stopped talking about the sky completely. And you know what happened? The neighbor became angry because without the argument, without the fight, the neighbor had to face something scary. The chance that he might be wrong. This is what happens when you stop explaining yourself to people trapped in false ideas. They get angry. They get worse. They blame you for leaving them, for being cold, for not caring. But here's the secret. Their anger is not about you. It's about them. It's about the fact that your silence forces them to look at themselves. And looking at yourself when you've been living in false ideas is one of the most uncomfortable things a person can do. So they'd rather you keep talking, keep explaining, keep playing your part in their drama, because as long as you're engaged, they don't have toe change. But you don't have to play that game anymore. You can step back. You can be quiet. You can let them have their version of reality without feeling the need to correct it. This is not caring. This is wisdom. This is understanding that some battles are not yours to fight. Now here's where it gets interesting. When you stop explaining yourself, something changes. You begin to save your energy. You begin to protect what's special, your peace, your clearness, your sense of self. These things are valuable. And when you throw them into talks with people who can't receive them, you're wasting treasure. You're throwing pearls before pigs. As the saying goes, not because the people are bad, but because they're not ready. They're not able to see the value in what you're offering, and so they step on it. They laugh at it. They use it against you. Think about the talks you've had recently. The ones that left you feeling drained, not understood, upset. Now ask yourself, was the other person actually listening? Or were they waiting for their turn to talk? Were they trying to understand your view, or were they simply defending their own? If it's the second one, then you were explaining yourself to someone who was never going to hear you. And the energy you spent was energy you'll never get back. There's a certain kind of person who loves this pattern. They love to pull you into endless explanations because it gives them power. The more you explain, the more weapons they have. They'll take your words, twist them, and throw them back at you in ways you never meant. They'll say, "But you said this," when you said nothing of the sort. They'll see your silence as guilt, your patience as weakness, your kindness as tricks. And no matter what you do, no matter how clearly you speak, they'll find a way to not understand you. Because understanding you would require them to change. And change is scary. So what do? You stop. You stop explaining. You stop defending. You stop trying to make them see, because the truth is they already see. They just don't like what they see, and that's not your problem. Your problem is that you've been taking responsibility for how they see things. You've been acting as though their not understanding is your failure. But it's not. Their not understanding is their choice. Let me tell you what happens when you choose silence. First, you take back your power. When you stop giving explanations, you stop giving away your control. You stop acting as though you need their approval, their okay, their understanding. You simply are. And there's something very powerful about that. It's the power of a person who no longer needs to defend their life. The power of someone who knows their worth is not decided by whether others can see it. Second, you create space. Space for truth to come out on its own. Space for the other person to sit with their own thoughts without your constant input. Space for God or the universe or whatever you want to call that deeper intelligence to work. When you're always talking, always explaining, you fill up all the space. But when you're silent, something else can enter. And often that something else is far more effective than anything you could have said. Third, you begin to see clearly. You begin to see who is really interested in understanding you and who is simply interested in the drama. The people who truly care will accept your silence with grace. They'll give you space. They'll trust that you have your reasons. But the people who are trapped in false ideas will panic. They'll demand explanations. They'll blame you for being secretive, distant, cold. And in their reaction, they'll show exactly why you were right to stop explaining in the first place. Now let's talk about what silence is not. Silence is not avoiding. It's not running away from hard talks or refusing to talk when talking is really needed. Silence is knowing. It's knowing when words will help and when they'll only make things worse. It's seeing that some people are not ready for your truth, and that's okay. You don't need everyone to be ready. You just need to be wise enough not to waste your pearls on those who can't value them. Silence is also not punishment. It's not a way of getting back at someone or making them feel bad. It's simply a boundary, a way of saying, I will not be part of this particular dance anymore. Because the dance of endless explanation is tiring. It keeps you small. It keeps you stuck, and it keeps the other person stuck too, because they never have to face their own false ideas as long as you're there to argue with them. Here's the thing about false ideas. They're comfortable. They're familiar. People build whole identities around their false ideas. They build complex mental structures to support them. And when you come along with your truth, your clearness, your different view, you're threatening the whole structure. You're asking them to tear down what they've spent years building. And most people won't do that. They'll defend their false ideas with everything they have. They'll fight you, blame you, make you the bad guy, anything to keep their world intact. And you know what? That's their right. They have every right to live in whatever reality they choose. But you have a right too. You have the right to stop tiring yourself trying to change their mind. You have the right to walk away from talks that go nowhere. You have the right to protect your energy, your peace, your mind. And you use that right through silence, through the simple, powerful act of not engaging. There's an old saying that goes something like this: never argue with a fool. People watching may not be able to tell the difference, but I'd take it a step further. Never explain yourself to someone who has already decided what you are, because no explanation will change their mind. They've made their judgment, they've written their story, and you're wasting your breath trying to change it. Instead, save your words for those who can hear them. Save your energy for friendships that actually feed you. Save your truth for people who are hungry for it. Because there are people out there who will understand you without long explanations. There are people who will see you clearly without you having to perform or prove or explain. And those are the people worth your time. But what about the others? What about the people trapped in false ideas who keep demanding your attention, your explanations, your defense? Let them go not with anger or bad feelings, but with caring. Let them have their false ideas. Let them believe whatever they need to believe and trust that if they're meant to wake up, they will. But it won't be because you convinced them. It will be because life itself taught them. And life is a far better teacher than you could ever be. So, here's what I'm asking you to do. The next time someone demands an explanation from you, someone who has already decided what you are, what you meant, what you did, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, will this explanation actually help? Or will it just give them more material to twist? If it's the second one, stay silent. Let them sit with their guesses. Let them fill in the blanks however they want, because their understanding says far more about them than it does about you. And in that silence, you'll find something amazing. You'll find yourself. Not the version of yourself that bends and twists to be understood, not the version that tires itself trying to please everyone, but the real you, the you that exists whether or not anyone understands or not. The you that doesn't need approval because it knows its own truth. And that version of you is far more powerful than any explanation you could ever give. Stop explaining yourself to people trapped in false ideas. Not because you're giving upon them, not because you don't care, but because you finally understand that some people aren't ready to see. And that's okay. Let them have their blindness. Let them have their confusion. Let them have their version of you. Because the real you, the one that knows, the one that sees, the one that simply is, doesn't need their approval. Your peace is more valuable than their understanding. Your energy is more valuable than their acceptance. Your truth is more important than their opinion. Remember that. Hold on to that. And the next time you feel that familiar urge to explain, to defend, to justify, just stop. Be still, be quiet, be free. Because silence, my friend, is not the absence of talking. It's the presence of wisdom. And wisdom knows when to speak and when to simply let things be.